many live bait options in use for walleyes today, these are the primary ones and will cover most situations with ease and effectiveness.
Jumbo leeches hooked through the sucker have an enticing swimming motion that drives walleyes crazy. They're deadly on live bait rigs and bobber techniques, and even produce on spinner rigs and jigs. Night crawlers hook lightly through the nose, squirm like crazy when they're fished on live bait rigs, bobbers, or simple split shot and hook arrangements. They're superb on trolled spinner rigs and weight-forward spinners too. Some anglers use pieces of crawler to sweeten jigs or the hooks on trolled crankbaits. Many species of minnows are outstanding walleye baits. Shiners are widely available, though they tend to be fragile and hard to keep alive. Fatheads are a small, hardy bait and are excellent for tipping jigs. Chubs are durable and lively, providing hours of fish attracting movement and vibration. Suckers are easy to obtain and are a fair substitute for chubs, especially if you want large minnows to trigger big fish. Bass or rainbows are very similar to chubs, but seldom grow as large. Live minnows trolled on live bait rigs are typically hooked just up through the lips, with the size of the hook balanced to match the bulk of the minnow. Still fish live minnows are typically hooked just beneath the dorsal fin, allowing them to swim and struggle enticingly against the line. Hook minnows up through the bottom jaw and out the top of the skull when you're jig fishing. They don't have to be alive as long as they're fresh. The main difference between walleye tackle and the lures used for bass, muskies, and pike is that walleye products are mainly live bait delivery systems as opposed to being strictly artificial lures. Now, here are some of the most popular options.
Other than live bait, the lead head jig is perhaps the oldest and most universal piece of walleye tackle. Its dense lead head sinks to the bottom and remains there at slow trolling or drifting speeds. It's perfect for walleyes, whether fished plain or tipped with live bait like a minnow, leech, or piece of nightcrawler.
The easiest way to vertically work a jig in deep water is to let out just enough line for the lure to hit the bottom. Down she goes. Good. Then close the bail and pick up the line with your trigger finger. You want just enough line out there to feel the bottom, and then alternately lift and drop it with slow pauses. Nothing too drastic, feeling for that sensitive bite. Minimize slack by maintaining an ever so slight tautness in the line as the jig falls back to the bottom. If a fish inhales it, you'll feel it if there's no slack in the line. Most walleye jigs run somewhere in the 1/16 to 1/2 ounce range, with the lighter sizes being ideally suited to casting in shallow water. Now cast the bait out, and as soon as it hits the water, pick up the line with your finger. If it's shallow, you can even close the bail right away. There, you can feel it hit the bottom when you see the line go slack, and then just alternately pump and let it drop. And whenever it's not moving, I always put my finger on the line to sense those sensitive strikes. You just alternate that all the way back to the boat, and if one comes up and just breathes on it, you got them. Jigs were once only available with pre-tied hair or feather bodies, but nowadays, numerous head and plastic body shapes in a rainbow of colors allow you to mix and match combinations in an infinite array. Action tails, breathing marabou, even plain heads, take your pick. Body jigs can be fished plain or tipped with live bait, whereas plain heads must obviously be tipped with plastic tails and or live bait. Add a small treble stinger hook for short strikes, particularly in cold water.
Live bait rigs. Live bait rigs come in numerous styles. Most notable is the sliding sinker, barrel swivel, plain hook rig that is ideally suited for clear water or spooky fish near the bottom. Add live bait, and its natural simplicity produces walleyes like crazy.
Drop the rig to the bottom, leave the bail open, and pick up the line with your trigger finger. Then slowly back troll or drift along, alternately hopping the rig on and off the bottom. If you drag it, it'll snag. If you sense a strike, release a little line, tighten up, and get it taut but not tight. If you're in real deep water, you want to back up towards the fish, picking up the slack to ensure that you get a real good hook set. And once you're right there, just tighten her up. Shouldn't take too long if they're aggressive. There he is. Not a big one, but it feels like a walleye. There we go. Supper. Walleyes that are slightly off the bottom call for a floater rig. These small cork or foam jig heads lift leeches, crawlers, or minnows slightly off the bottom if you move slowly and allow the rig frequent pauses. In general, you fish these on a slightly longer snell than the standard 24 to 30 inch rig. 4 to 8 feet is usually best. In any case, match your hook size to the size of the bait for best results. Small baits like nosed hook crawlers or suction cup hooked leeches work best on small number 6 or 8 hooks. Larger lip hooked minnows usually work best on hooks ranging from number 4 to number 2/0, depending upon the size of the minnow.
Spinner rigs and bottom bouncers are a fast-paced forward trolling approach designed to cover water quickly in search of active fish. Heavier weights of 3/4 to 1.5 ounces are generally necessary to keep the rigs down at the speeds required to rotate the spinner blade. These are either bell sinkers fished on 3-way dropper rigs, which allow you to adjust the depth of the dropper line and vary the bait's distance from the bottom, or bottom bouncers, which ride tight to the bottom. The most popular blades are number 3, number 4, or number 5 Colorado, or Indiana styles in silver, gold, or various bright colors like orange and chartreuse.
Spinner rigs and bottom bouncers are really versatile. With minnows and leeches, you usually just use one hook, but crawler rigs generally have 2 or 3 hooks in a harness. Just pop it over the side, let it go to the bottom, and put the boat in gear. Once it reaches the bottom, you see the line stop moving, then just put your thumb on it and hold it, and you'll feel the vibration of the blade. Now, as you cruise along for a little while, the blade tends to lift up off the bottom, and you have to give a little more slack out there to let the rig drop all the way back, and boom, there it is. Now, this is really very snag-free. Just bounce it up and down off the bottom in a pumping motion like this, and when a fish hits, you just drop back, tighten the slack, and drill them. And that's all there is to it.
Crankbaits. Crankbaits are another quick-moving artificial lure approach best designed for forward trolling. However, they are also effective when cast for shallow water aggressive fish in windy conditions or at night.
Walleyes prefer long, thin crankbaits rather than fat-bodied ones. Their wide wobble at moderate speeds of, let's say, 1.5 to 2 miles an hour is ideal for walleyes. Now, shallow-running, unweighted minnow lures are best run across shallow flats or above the tops of weeds. But if you put a few split shot on the line ahead of the lure, then you can scratch the tops of rocky points or weed beds. And if you increase this to 1.5 or 2 ounces, you can actually troll these things down to probably 25 or 30 feet without any kind of a problem. Use Great Lakes style trolling boards to spread your lines out to the side of the boat, allowing you to cut a large swath as you cruise across the open water. Deep diving shad style crankbaits are ideal for casting around shallow cover, across the tops of rocks, or even just above weed tops. Give the lure a few quick turns of the reel handle to get it down and wobbling, and then just back off and go slow. Now, walleyes will hit a free-running lure. You don't necessarily have to bang the bottom like you do with bass. Just give the rod an occasional pump and flutter, and you're all set.
Bobber rigs are the ultimate for teasing finicky fish out of boulders or weeds. You can stick a live leech, minnow, or crawler directly in the fish's face and let it wiggle there without snagging the bottom. The natural action of wind and waves adds an enticing movement to the bait.
Fixed bobbers are fine for casting shallow water, but once you get to about 4 feet or so, they're very unwieldy to cast. So in that case, it's best to go to a slip bobber. Now, a slip bobber slides up and down the line until it reaches this adjustable bobber stop. This very lightly grips the line, and you can set that wherever you want, from 2 feet to 20 feet deep. It's really very versatile. The best way to fish a bait with a slip bobber is to set the depth so the bait rides just above the bottom and occasionally brushes against it. And then you just cast out a little bit upwind of the spot and let the natural action of the wind drift it in and let the bait enticingly work in front of the walleyes. Best of all, the stop slides right through the rod guides and onto the reel and doesn't interfere with casting. Most anglers use a plain hook and split shot to present the bait, but in dark, stained, or turbid water, try substituting a 16th ounce fluorescent jig head. It adds a little bit of color and it helps the walleyes find the bait. Lighted bobbers with internal batteries or bobbers with luminous paint work equally well. When the light disappears, tighten up the slack and use a long, sweeping hook set to nail the fish.
The weight-forward spinner is a unique lure which is the method for catching suspended walleyes on Lake Erie. It combines a heavy lead body with a flashing spinner and large hook, which you thread a nightcrawler on.
Thread a nightcrawler on the large single hook just any old way you can. It doesn't have to be fancy. Cast ahead and slightly to the side of the boat so you're not drifting right over the fish that you're casting to. And experiment with different depths by using different weights of lures and different amounts of sinking time. Now you count 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, etc. until it reaches the depth level that you want, and then just give the rod tip a pump to get the spinner blade turning and reel it in slowly back to the boat. And that's really all you need to do. Walleyes will just jump all over this thing, and once you determine the productive depth level, concentrate your efforts there. The weight-forward spinner enjoys little popularity except on Lake Erie, but it's deadly for long-distance casting to wind-roiled shorelines. You can drop it in inches of water, give the rod a pop to get the blade turning, and have walleye slam it before it ever moves 5 feet. Give it a try.
A fairly recent addition to the walleye angler's arsenal is the jigging spoon. Unlike wide, flat pike spoons which are designed for casting, these are thick, heavy lures designed primarily for vertical jigging in deep water.
Use an aggressive pump and flutter with the spoon. Be sure to maintain slight tension with the rod tip as the lure descends. This enables you to feel those soft strikes. This style of lure can be surprisingly effective in cold water conditions. In fact, it's one of the prime ways to catch walleyes through the ice. Ice fishermen often add half a minnow to the treble hook to sweeten the offering a bit. Mid-South reservoir anglers, however, use them straight out of the package and hammer deep fish along creek channel edges in fall. River anglers try them both ways and often produce fish below dams at times when the standard jig and minnow technique slows.